Hello and welcome to News Central Now with me, Blessings Mosugu. The top stories at this hour. Federal government tightens border surveillance as monkeypox cases hit 39. Nigeria's inflation rate drops for the first time in 19 months. Burundi pardons journalist sentenced to 10 years in jail. We've got the details in a moment. Let's begin now with health matters. The federal government has intensified monitoring and screening procedures at all entry points into the country in response to the monkeypox outbreak. The Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Mohammed Pate, disclosed this in a statement signed by his Special Advisor on Media and External Relations, Teklami Hala. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control and Prevention on Thursday reported 39 confirmed cases of Mpox, but no death across 33 states and the Federal Capital Territory from the beginning of 2024. The minister explained that the government had implemented a new mandate requiring all travelers to complete an online health declaration form before departing for the country. Now, as the pulse of Nigeria's most populous state, Lagos, continues to beat stronger, its healthcare system faces unprecedented pressures. With a growing population, rising disease burdens, and strained resources, the Lagos state government says it is set to launch a digital platform to revolutionize healthcare delivery and assessment across the state. News Central's Adeshewa Odushoga reports.
In a move to transform the healthcare landscape in the state with its expanding population, the Lagos government is set to launch the Lagos Smart Health Information Platform. This digital structure is designed to integrate various aspects of healthcare delivery, addressing the pressing challenges of rapid population growth, human resource shortages, limited budgetary allocations, and the increasing burden of communicable and non-communicable diseases.
The idea around this is to create a platform of information exchange, whereas data is gathered at the patient interface. As a patient enters into the health ecosystem, the public health ecosystem, at that very point of entry, we already start to collect data. And as the patient moves through the process of their health managed care, we are gathering data at every point.
SHIP is going to allow us to be more patient-focused. We are patient-focused, but it just gives us that extra, not only incentive, but that extra step to be patient-focused. Patient-focused means our care will be individualized and it will give us better outcomes for the patient. So on the supply side, SHIP gives us a chance to improve the quality of care we give. SHIP allows all the healthcare professionals to be able to work at their best. SHIP allows all the clinical staff to reduce errors, medication errors, for example, when we've talked about how pharmacists will also be able to obviously dispense medications in a more effective and efficient manner.
The state says the SHIP platform, as it is called, will serve as the backbone of the state health information system, facilitating seamless data exchange, collaboration and coordination among healthcare providers, policymakers and patients.
As health managers, us at the top of the health chain in the ministry can see at a glance all the data analytics that have been processed, and we can see all possible outcomes and disease trends and where things are moving to, and it helps us to make informed decisions that will very, very greatly impact health in the right way.
By streamlining healthcare services and improving data-driven decision-making, the platform is expected to have a profound impact on the health and well-being of Lagos residents. In Lagos, for News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
And let's also tell you that a fire outbreak occurred in the early hours of Friday at a 7-story building on Sani Adewale Street, Lagos Island local government area. Now, this was made known in a statement by the director of the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, Margaret Adesheye. Now, Adesheye said the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service received a distress call at past 5 a.m. and promptly responded with firefighters from Ebute-Elefun, Sari, and Lekki 1 stations. Adesheye confirmed that the situation is under control and no casualties have been reported. Preliminary investigation suggests that the fire was triggered by an electrical surge. And in the meantime, the Lagos State Government has announced a temporary traffic diversion at the Ikeja Along bus stop on the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway. From Saturday to Sunday midnight at 4 a.m., the Oshodi-bound lane will be closed to allow for the safe demolition of the old pedestrian bridge. Only one lane will be open to motorists between the Ilezik bus stop and Cornwall filling station. The diversion will not affect motorists on the Dokpemu-Abulegba-bound side. The Lagos State Traffic Management Authority says it will manage traffic flow to minimize inconveniences. Motorists are advised to be patient as the closure is necessary for the safe removal of the pedestrian bridge. Protective measures will be in place to ensure safety during the demolition. And now going to more stories, President Bola Tinubu and his Equatorial Guinea counterpart, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, have signed a landmark agreement on the Gulf of Guinea pipeline project, further strengthening their partnership for mutual development. Now, this agreement addresses key aspects like legislative and regulatory measures, pipeline establishment and operation, natural gas transit, pipeline ownership, and overarching principles. Now, during the signing ceremony, the Nigerian leader, who is on a 3-day official visit to Equatorial Guinea, highlighted that this agreement will unlock new opportunities for gas exploration and job creation.
Together to make peace the focus of our development in order to really develop. Without peace, we cannot develop. Our problem is not that we don't understand what to do. We identify them, we understand what to do. Our problem is how and when we should do that.
Now, the federal government of Nigeria has accused a Chinese company, Zhongshan Fucheng Industrial Investment Co. Limited, of subterfuge after a French court ruled in favor of the firm and granted the seizure of presidential jets belonging to the Nigerian government. In a statement on Thursday, presidential spokesman Bayo Ononuga alleged that the Chinese firm is trying to take over offshore assets of the federal government of Nigeria through subterfuge. Now, in a dispute involving an arbitration award, the court in Paris ruled in favor of the Chinese firm, allowing it to seize 3 presidential jets on routine maintenance in France as security for claims in a decades-long judicial matter between the foreign company and the Osun state government. To some business-related stories now, Nigeria's headline inflation rate has experienced its first decline since December 2022, dropping from 34.19% to 33.40% in July 2024. Now, this information was revealed in the Consumer Price Index Inflation Report released by the National Bureau of Statistics on Thursday. The report highlighted a 0.79% decrease in headline inflation for July. However, the July inflation figure remains 9.32% higher than the rate recorded in the same period in 2023. Now, on a month-on-month basis, the headline inflation rate for July 2024 stood at 2.28%, slightly lower than the 2.31% reported in June 2024. Now, earlier on, a financial expert, Oyeyinka Oyekon, joined us on the news to discuss this.
This is not just a cup of tea for the federal government. The subnational government has to be on deck. The local government has to be on deck. Of course, they take a larger percentage of the responsibility. However, we, the people, we have to get on this as well. Having said that, we as Nigerians, we have to aggressively start to do a lot of exportation of goods and services. And the government needs to support this by ensuring that the ministers, the directors, the permanent secretaries that are aligned or linked with exportation, they have to really support this to ensure that this is smooth. The government has to, and us too, we have to promote manufacturing at micro, at medium, and at macro levels. I'm sure you'll be asking, what's micro level manufacturing? So you can do some manufacturing on a plot of land. It doesn't have to be a big industrial complex. And at this level, the subnational governments can also provide what I call industrial parks, powered and also with transport infrastructure to facilitate manufacturing.
Now, Nigeria's government has inaugurated a technical subcommittee to develop a framework for the sale of crude oil to local refineries in Naira. The committee, which is chaired by the finance minister, comprises representatives from key agencies, including the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the African Export-Import Bank, and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. Now, the committee has been mandated to create a robust template for the successful implementation of the presidential directive to sell crude oil to local refineries in Naira. The Nigerian Social Insurance Trust Fund says its target is to declassify NSITF as a revenue-generating agency and increase the number of corporate organizations registered by 1 million yearly. The NSITF Managing Director Oluwaseun Faleye stated this during the agency's retreat for the Committees on Labor and Employment of the Senate and House of Representatives in Lagos. Now, Faleye disclosed plans to collaborate with the lawmakers to drive compliance, as many MDAs had not been serious about paying their emoluments to the fund.
Members of Nigeria's National Assembly and the leadership of the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund, NSITF, have called for a review of the presidential directive on a 50% automatic deduction from internally generated revenues of federal government-owned enterprises. Speaking at a two-day NSITF retreat for the Senate and House Committee on Labor, Employment and Productivity, the lawmakers agreed that the NSITF is also not treasury-funded, does not draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, and ought to be removed from the schedule of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. They called on the MD of the fund, Faleye Oluwaseun, to step up efforts to classify the trust fund as a non-revenue generating agency.
I think as National Assembly there's a need for us to address this issue with the Honorable Minister of Finance, for him to understand the difference between, yes, you may understand, but when somebody is looking for money at government, they seem not to do as if they understand the difference between revenue generation and self-funding. NSITF is self-funding. It's not a revenue generation company.
The NSITF boss said the agency's management was in Lagos State on a two-day retreat to discuss how to collaborate with lawmakers to achieve the objectives of the trust fund.
Let me be clear, because we've had to deal with this in our various engagements with the relevant agencies. NSITF is not a revenue-generating agency of government. We are trustees mandated by law to manage funds for the protection of Nigerian workers. Our missions aligns with other international standards, like I said, such as International Labour Organization and International Social Security Administration.
The NSITF was set up to formulate the employee scheme, where the fund provides cash and non-cash support to injured or diseased workers arising from hazard from their work activities.
You're still live with us on the news. We go on a quick break now, and when we come back, more stories. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us on the news. Now to more stories. Energy experts in Nigeria have revealed that about 60% of citizens lack access to stable electricity, which has been caused by a significant drop in investment in the sector. Now, this was made known during a policy workshop in Abuja, which aims to create an efficient and viable electricity market for the country. News Central's Joshua Imarai has the details.
Energy experts during a policy workshop in the nation's capital, Abuja. The workshop reviewed strategies for the efficient and viable electricity sector in the country, while raising an alarm that about 60% of citizens lack stable access to electricity. Experts here say that the over-reliance on government to fund the electricity sector has led to regular collapse of the national grid.
So if you require $10 billion for the electricity sector, it means that you have to get investments, both domestic investments and international investments. If we have the framework, if we have the legal infrastructure, those investors will bring their money and they will invest here. We don't need to rely on the state government or the federal government to fund the electrification of Nigeria.
The called for the need to accelerate the development of the country's energy sector in a bid to meet the 2060 net zero target.
In whatever context, whatever the future energy mix will be globally, but especially in West Africa and across Africa, Nigeria should be a key player in supplying energy across West Africa and Africa. And the state governments will in that key position to do this. And they can do this via renewable energy because the structures are already being put in place.
Participants at the workshop emphasized the need to clearly define the roles of the state government and the regulatory commission in the formulation of policies for the sector. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Nigeria's Minister of Information and National Orientation has pledged the federal government's commitment to ensuring freedom of the press in the country. Now, this was as he received an audience officials of the British Broadcasting Corporation in his office in Abuja. The minister says that the current administration will allow the press to thrive in the country, permitting diverse opinions from citizens.
To continuing with that mission and to growing our audience here in Nigeria, particularly those audiences who find consumption of news more challenging, perhaps those who are not as capable of getting news digitally as other parts of the country.
I want to share with you the commitment of the Nigerian government to every news gathering organization. Our commitment is that we want to stay as focused, as umpires, and as free as possible. The trust of the policy of the Tinubu administration is that every news organization has the freedom to practice its operations.
Now, in the meantime, the Nigeria Police Force Delta State Command has responded to a video that went viral on Wednesday that policemen attached to Dragon 15 shot a boy in Mosugu on Tuesday. The mouthpiece of the command, Bright Edafe, who briefed newsmen about the trending news on the social media platform, debunked the claim and described it as fake news. He said after a careful and thorough investigation of the video, the CP directed that the team look for the boy to come and tell the world himself if indeed he was shot or not. Edafe, however, revealed that the police are in trail of the person who made the video that is circulating on social media, just as he called on bloggers and social media influencers to always fact-check their sources before posting on social media.
The primary issue that led to all this, it could have been worse. The policemen could have been mobbed, their vehicle could have been set ablaze, and that particular community would not be properly policed. If someone was shot, the evidence would be so clear, so obviously known by all, and that's to let you know that the intention of that person who was making that video was obvious, to create panic, to spread falsehood on social media. I want Nigerians to discourage this trend. It can happen to anybody. Let us always put ourselves in the shoe of anyone that is being dragged negatively on the internet. Falsehood is dangerous. I keep saying it. Whatever happened during the NSAS protest is not something we are all proud of. And that was a product of fake news.
On Tuesday, it's God that did it for me. The officer stopped me on the road. Then I checked me, I don't see anything. It's just my machine paper and the plate number. It's just the plate number that's expired. But I still thank God that nothing happened to me. The officer don't shoot me. I am alive. So I just thank God.
Now, Kogi State Commissioner for Information and Communications, Kingsley Fanwo, has explained the rationale behind the appointment of 717 ward special assistants by the governor of the state, Usman Ododo. Now, the commissioner, while briefing newsmen, said the appointments were made at deepening democracy and ensuring participatory governance among the grassroots population. He assured the people of the determination of the governor to give power to the people. Fanwo also explained that the high number does not translate to high cost of governance, saying that the salaries of 3 wards would amount to what one special assistant would have earned.
239 wards of the state is now having 3 ward special assistants. And the rationale behind it is to ensure that the governor is able to build a formidable foot soldiers across the 239 wards to be able to propagate the projects, policies and programs of the government for the proper mobilization of the grassroots population. This is as a result of the policy of the present administration in the state to ensure that the people at the grassroots receive a lot of attention and also carried along in governance. Now they have a very great sense of belonging because people that are appointed as ward special assistants are people who sleep and wake up in those wards. If you stay in another ward...
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has tasked the newly appointed Mandate Secretary for the FCT's Youth Secretariat to draw up programs that will improve the lives of youths in the Federal Capital. This was during the swearing-in ceremony of the Secretary and 4 permanent secretaries in Abuja, where he urged them to use their offices as a force for good to bring development and prosperity to citizens and youths in the capital.
Having appointed you as a mandate secretary for youths, it's not just to be happy. You must sit down, probably come out with a program that will help the youths. What we have found out is that most people are only interested by the fact that I've been given an appointment. Sit down. What do I do that will help the youth of Abuja? That is key. You are the Pioneer Mandate Secretary. You must use it to say, while I was there as the Pioneer Mandate Secretary, this was my program for the interest of the...
And now up north, full business activities have begun within the Jos Bukuru metropolis as Governor Caleb Mutfwang had lifted the curfew earlier imposed on the area. Now, economic activities had been obstructed, accounting for a decline in the revenue generation of a state through individual and group business activities. News Central's Chizoba Anyunwe tells us more.
4th August was the day a 24-hour curfew was imposed by the governor of Plateau State, resulting from unrest by youths in Bauchi and Zololo Junction areas of Jos on the 4th day of the peaceful #End Bad Governance in Nigeria protest in the state. Since then, residents had no choice than to observe the curfew hours for the safety of both lives and property within the Jos Bukuru metropolis. Following calls for further reviews of the curfew, the governor gave heed and did the needful.
It's because of the compliance with the curfew And of course, the security has improved, and the intelligence community have given us an intelligence that is favorable, that they can manage. If you notice, we lifted it in bits, and now we've lifted it in its entirety. And we want to thank Plateau people for the compliance, for their resolve to cohabit peacefully with one another, and of course, for the ambience of tranquility that we have created.
For some residents who spoke to News Central, it is a welcome development.
I can assure you that the citizens of Plateau can sleep with their two eyes closed, knowing that we are on ground to ensure that their safety is our priority. They have been helping us with useful information, and I also want to confirm to them here that their information being given to us is effectively used.
With the assurance of security on the plateau, residents are urged not to relent in feeding security operatives with relevant information.
We thank God what the governor did, because he did it because of to protect the life of people and the properties of people. We thank God that the governor did very well. They removed the coffee and many people go back to their businesses. Nothing is happening again. We thank God for that.
We have missed a lot of things outside there. But finally, when it has been lifted, you can see people moving out like animals that were caged. So we thank God for the governor have seen our plea and he has lifted off the curfew.
As people go about their lawful businesses, it is hoped that they continue to be law-abiding, maintaining peace, so that the kind of unrest that happened, that brought about this curfew, would not happen again. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
And now coming up on the news, Burundi pardons jailed journalist Florine Iregabie. We'll bring you the details after the break. Thanks for staying with us. You're still live with us on the news. And now to more stories. The presidency of Burundi has announced the pardon of journalist Florine Iregabie, who was sentenced to 10 years in prison for allegedly undermining the integrity of the national territory. Now, Iregabie was arrested in August 2022 and sentenced in January 2023, sparking international concerns over press freedom. President Evariste Ndayishimiye granted the pardon on the 14th of August, allowing for her total remission of sentences. Human rights group ACAT Burundi welcomed the decision, but urged the president to release all others unjustly imprisoned. The case had drawn international condemnation, with the UN voicing concern over her imprisonment for simply doing her job. Now, Burundi remains one of the poorest countries globally, ranking 108th out of 180 for press freedom. Malawi and Mozambique have signed crucial memorandums of understanding aimed at improving the energy sector and boosting trade between both countries. Now, speaking during the signing ceremony, which took place at the office of the President of Mozambique in Maputo, Malawi President Lazarus Chakwera said, "The signing of a trade agreements between Malawi and Mozambique is key in enhancing the economic relationship between Malawi and Mozambique." President Chakwera, together with his counterpart, President Felipe Nyusi, witnessed the signing ceremony of the MOUs on energy formalized by energy ministers of Malawi and Mozambique. Now, joining us on the news to discuss this is a political scientist, Wonderful Mkuche. Thank you so much, Wonderful, for joining us. Wonderful is joining us from Zomba in Malawi. Thank you once again for being a part of this conversation. Now, Wonderful, very quickly, how does this bilateral agreement enhance trade between both countries?
Yeah, indeed, President Chakwera was in Mozambique, where he was signing the trade agreement. Looking at the context of that agreement, we're talking about Malawi having 18% of connection rate when it comes to electricity, compared to 48% in Mozambique. And again, this country lost about 30% of its generation capacity due to the cyclone Freddy that happened 2 years ago. So there was a need for Malawi to make a move to secure electricity and this is also in line with the SADC energy documents. For example, the Southern Africa power pool, which is meant to connect countries in the southern region to the same electricity grid. And Malawi and Mozambique, they are simply advancing their agreements from those policy documents in order for them to grow their industries, looking at how strategic energy is when it comes to the country's economy.
All right. Also, I would like to know what challenges have historically hindered the trade between Malawi and Mozambique, these two countries, and how does this agreement aim to address those challenges?
Yeah, indeed. We have had historical challenges. We are neighbors, but we cannot run away from these historical problems. The first one is our first president, Kamsbanda, was not working together with the liberation movement of Renamo in Mozambique. So that tainted our bilateral relations. And again, there was also, during the Bingwa Mtalika presidency, the inland port, which happened without Mozambique being fully consulted. And then we also moved from using the Nagala port and also Beira port to start using Tanzania as our route for goods that we have been importing. So for so many years, we haven't had good relations with the Mozambique, but for now, we do see the two countries are changing the narrative, and all this is going to be history, looking at the current developments.
All right. Looking at the regional energy security initiatives as well in Southern Africa, how would you say that the energy partnership between Malawi and Mozambique aligns with this initiative?
Yeah, when we are looking at the southern region, the SADC region, as already said, we have policy documents where they try to address the energy challenges that we are facing as individual countries. And looking at the region as a whole, we are the least connected region when it comes to electricity compared to other economic or political regions in Africa. That simply says we need to do more. And looking at policies or approaches like the Southern Africa Power Pool, where we have to connect the grids, this is the direction that we have to go. Because when it comes to economic growth of our country as Malawi, it cannot happen in isolation. We need all the countries in the region to work together towards this.
All right. Thank you so much, Wonderful Nkuche. Thank you for joining us to discuss this bilateral partnership. And of course, we're going to be looking out to see how it pans out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And outside Africa, Ukraine has claimed fresh advances in its offensive into Russia, saying it seized over 1,100 square kilometers in the biggest attack by the foreign army on Russian soil since World War II. Now, Ukraine said it now controlled dozens of settlements and Suza, a town 8 kilometers from the border. Russia, meanwhile, said it had recaptured a village from Ukrainian forces in the Kursk border region and announced it was sending additional forces to the neighboring Belgorod region. Ukrainian troops launched the offensive on the 6th of August, breaking months of setbacks after battling a Russian invasion for more than 2 years. The top general also told President Volodymyr Zelensky the army had set up an administrative office to maintain law and order and meet the priority needs of the population in the controlled territories.
Как мы здесь оказались, на протяжении 2 лет с начала военной операции, наше село находится, если по прямой, в 6 километрах от границы. Мы слышали постоянные взрывы, постоянные полеты беспилотников. А 6 числа, когда стала обстановка накаляться, мы решили, когда мимо нашего дома начали лететь ракеты в сторону Корнева, мы решили выехать. Оповещение нет, мы сами решили. Просто стало очень страшно. У нас в семье дочь, маленький ребенок и зять. И мы решили выехать оттуда. И приехали. Вот сначала мы уехали во Львов, потом сказали, так как под Кромбыком тоже начинаются бои.
Now for more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Thank you, Afia, for joining us. Now, there was a statement made by Putin that the West and NATO did help the Ukraine with the incursion in Kursk. What has been the reaction to this statement?
Well, Washington, I think, are still slightly blindsided by the speed of the incursion by Ukraine into the Kursk region of Russia, and they're absorbing the impact of this lightning assault at the moment and assessing how the incursion might reshape the political and military dynamics of the war. And as well, you know, you have the wider implications on Washington's long shifting stance on how Ukraine can use American supplied arms. Now, yesterday, you had the United Kingdom saying that any arms that they gave to the Ukraine can be used in this incursion. They were given to the Ukraine for them to be used, and the US are finding themselves having to say the same thing. Yes, we have given weapons to the Ukraine, and yes, they are using them in this incursion, which is their right to do. Now, the US have said they had no prior knowledge of this incursion going ahead in the region. The UK have said the same thing. So they definitely are trying to shoot down this particular narrative that the Russians are trying to put across, that NATO and the UN were somehow involved in this incursion in the Kursk region. They are both saying, the UK and the US and NATO, all these parties are saying, look, we weren't given prior notice and it is nothing to do with us.
And what is the latest on the incursion in that region?
Well, the incursion continues. It's into its 11th day now. So 5 Russian drones were shot down overnight. This is according to the Ukrainian Air Force. The statement also said that Russia was struck with 3 ballistic missiles, and that consequences have been reported. That's the Russian Regional State Administration talking about that on Telegram as well. Unmanned boats that were heading towards the Crimean Peninsula have also been destroyed. An anti-Putin group of Russians that were fighting on behalf of the Ukraine have also been urging Russian soldiers in the Kursk region to surrender and fight with the Ukrainian army. In a call to Russian servicemen, again on Telegram, the Freedom of Russia Legion parliamentary group said political officers were telling them to blow yourself up with your own grenade, but hundreds of Russian soldiers ignored the criminal order, choosing to live rather than die for a new colonel's medal or another mansion. So they have been suggesting and supporting and saying that Russian soldiers should lay down their arms and should fight for the Ukraine instead. Now, Kyiv has also said that hundreds of Russian soldiers have been taken prisoner by Ukrainian forces since the start of this Kursk offensive.
All right. Finally, Afia, how exactly has Russia reacted to this incursion in Kursk?
Well, from the start of the incursion, Russian media were trying to play down that this was even happening at all. They wouldn't use the words incursion or invasion, and basically just saying incidents happening at the border, telling people that Ukrainian forces are being pushed back, and basically just putting a brave face on things. But there have been signs of pessimism, absolutely, from Russian state media about this invasion. They seem to be sort of waking up to the reality that perhaps they are on the losing side in this particular area. When it comes down to Vladimir Putin himself, you know, he has always been for 2.5 decades Mr. Security, you know, the only man in this vast country of Russia capable of keeping Russians safe. His so-called special military operation, otherwise known as the invasion of Ukraine, was part of that. But now there's literally holes being blown in that narrative. And this is a huge embarrassment for him, for this to happen on his watch. in his war is very, very embarrassing for him. And so he and Russian state media continue to play it down, even though there is more of a hint of pessimism than there's ever been.
All right, News Central's international correspondent Afia Hagen, thank you so much for the updates. And of course, we'll be looking forward to seeing how things unfold. We go on a short break now, and when we come back, more stories. Stay with us. Now to some business stories. In July 2024, Ghana's inflation rate dropped to 20.9%. Now, this indicates a 1.9 percentage point drop from the 22.8% recorded in June. The Ghana Statistical Service reports that in June 2024, food inflation decreased to 21.5% from 24.0%, and non-food inflation decreased to 20.5%. Now, in a news conference, government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina Anim said the inflation rate for imported foods or goods had similarly decreased from 17.5% to 15.6%. He ascribed this to the cedi's stability in July 2024. Earlier on, a financial analyst and investment advisor, Patrick Abankwa, joined us on the news to discuss this.
It can be attributed to several interconnected factors. I think the first that we all need to know is the stabilization of the exchange rate within the last 2 or 3 months. Don't forget, we started the year with the cedi depreciating very fast against the US dollar and the euros and pounds. But for the last 2 or so months, the rate of depreciation has stabilized. And that meant that the rate at which prices were going up have also come down a bit or slowed. Secondly, government's measures to control monetary expansion, such as tightening their monetary policy, have also contributed to cooling down the economy within the period. Additionally, you can also look at the gradual improvement in our food supply, particularly with the harvest season underway, which has eased price pressures on essential food items. Then, of course, the declining trend in the global commodity prices, especially with fuel, has also dampening effect on the economic challenges that we are facing. So once that improves, it means that domestic inflation will also improve.
And to some sports update, Chigozie Chileku has completed his move to Tanzanian club Tabora United. Chileku leaves 9-time Nigeria Premier Football League champions Enyimba after the expiration of his contract last month. The left-back put pen to paper on a 1-year deal. The left-back increased the number of Nigerian players at the club to 4, joining ex-Rivers United trio of Shedrack Asiegbu, Victor Suchima and Maurice Chukwu. The defender joined the People's Elephant at the start of the 2022-2023 season. Now, he was part of the Enyimba side that won the NPFL title during the same season. The 28-year-old previously played for Sunshine Stars, Lobby Stars and Aqua United. Still in sports, ahead of the crucial first leg preliminary round of the CAF Champions League, the African soccer ruling body has appointed Uganda official for the game involving Remo Stars and Asfar of Morocco. The Sky Blue Stars qualified to represent the country after they finished second in the 2023-2024 Nigeria Premier Football League season. Asfar also finished second last season in the Moroccan League. The football body announced Uganda's Mashoud Salih as the center referee for the game. Now, this game is scheduled to take at the Remo Stars Stadium in Ikene on August 19, 2024. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced on Friday that Poland would officially bid to host the Olympic Games in 2040 or 2044. This announcement follows that of Poland's Conservative President Andrzej Duda, who announced last year that he intended to submit his country's bid to host the Summer Olympics in 2036. Poland has never organized an Olympic Games before. In 2012, it co-hosted the European Football Championship with Ukraine. It also hosted the European Games in 2023. Berlin is also planning to bid for the 2040 Olympics. Well, that's all on the news at this hour, but before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. Now, we told you that the federal government has tightened border surveillance as monkeypox cases hit 39. We also mentioned Nigeria's inflation rate has dropped for the first time in 19 months. And finally, we told you that Burundi has pardoned journalists sentenced to 10 years in jail. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Also do well to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, StarTimes, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Blessings Mosugu.